Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud, the podcast about writing, authorship, storytelling, and the creative types of endeavors that one might undertake. It is me, of course, Matt Cassem, and I've got the beautiful, amazing, stunning, stellar, and also incredible.
You couldn't figure out what that last word was. What adjective you were going to give me.
I will never
but I'll
tell
take
you.
incredible. That's nothing to sneeze at.
You are incredible. So I hear that we have a special topic that we want to talk about this week.
Yes.
What is that?
Yes.
What is that?
Burnout.
Burnout.
Burnout. Oh,
Okay.
yes. We have all been burned out at one point or another for different varying reasons and everything.
We have, definitely have.
Yes. And in fact, I don't know if you're going to incorporate it into this episode. You probably already have. Last week, we were actually supposed to record this, and we danced around it all night long until we both said, I'm just too burned out.
It was a little bit fortuitous on that one, I think.
Yes. And we had a good laugh about it. And we said, okay, we're both feeling the same thing. So what is burnout? I have a very simplistic definition. I'm going to give that part, and then you have some added thoughts. So burnout is a state of complete mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. That in itself is burnout. It can have a lot of causes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also the manifestation of that, right? That feeling of being drained, of just not having the energy or the fortitude to go forward. And just the ability, or not even the ability, just the sense of detachment from work.
Yeah.
Right? That you're just, it doesn't bring you the joy that it did. And again, I say work, but I mean, really, we're talking about in our scope of things, the creative endeavors, right? So I know you had a quote that you'd found from Arianna Huffington. I almost said Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande. A little bit different. Yeah. This is actually where the idea for this particular podcast came. It's in she was addressing a different topic altogether, but it really struck me for creative people. And that's why I wanted to bring it into this space with writers, storytellers, the creative side of you that needs to deal with the burnout in order to create. So the quote is, when we're burned out, we're less likely to come up with creative solutions to complex problems like climate change. So, of course, she was talking about climate change, but I really honed in on the come up with creative solutions to complex problems. How many times have you been sitting there with your story and you can't figure out what needs to happen next, or this particular thing about a character or a problem or whatever it is that you're dealing with? Under normal circumstances, when you're not burned out, you can come up with 1,000,001 solutions. You have all the tools, you have your routine, you have your different ways of dealing with it, of being creative. Sure. But burnout adds an extra layer of you can't come up with the creative solutions because literally your brain does not want to function. Your brain is saying to you, I'm tired. I'm mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. Your brain is saying those three things, and I'm done. I'm not going to give you any creative things. You're not going to get anything out of me. You actually said something that reminded me of a note I took on this when I was putting this together. And that is, you were talking about moving forward. Burnout tends to be one of the causes is moving at a pace you can't sustain, whether that is in that work side or life side, one or the other is moving at a pace you can't sustain.
Well, I think there might be different ways that cause it, right? Like to your point, it could be just an imbalance because work is stressing you out too much and you just don't have the mental capacity to come home and work on this, creative endeavor, right? Because maybe you also have to come home and take care of the kids and do more life work, right? So you just don't have the bandwidth to do it. Or it could manifest as procrastination. Like you're looking at this page and you're like, I gotta get this done, but I just don't want to, right?
Oh, I
because
think,
you've put so much into it. I think there's a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think burnout, one of the major symptoms is what you just said, procrastination. If you are procrastinating, figuring out why you are, it could be as simple of, okay, you don't know how to solve this problem or whatever. It might not be related to burnout, but I don't think there is burnout without procrastination.
Sure.
Because burnout, I think, automatically drives you to do those procrastinating things because you want to avoid the having to think, the having to do, the having to function. You just want to. Now, this is absolutely separate from if you're suffering from depression, if you're suffering from anxieties and other things. Those two things can be a part of burnout, certainly, but it's a different thing if you're suffering from depression and then burnout is just along for the ride. We're not talking about that. But yeah, I think you came across an article that gave some great bullet points on once you figure out you're burned out and suffering from it, what are some things they suggested doing?
Yeah, it's an interesting list of things that all make sense, but I think they're a little bit in the wrong order.
Okay.
So I'm going to read them as they are, and then we'll just kind of talk through it, right?
Yeah.
Identify the sources. So we just kind of talked a little bit about that, whether it's I've been going too hard, too long on this book, trying to finish it, and now I'm burnt out because I've just put too much mental energy into covering a lot of ground. Or again, work is stressing me out, or I've got just life has me by the nape of the neck, whatever.
Yeah.
But identify the sources, set boundaries, take breaks, practice self-care, seek support, manage stress, reevaluate your goals and priorities, improve time management, delegate tasks. And then the last one, which is why I say this is out of order, I think, consider professional help. So I think depending on the nature of your burnout is going to depend on what order those go in, right? Because I think there's times when you're burnt out and it's just sort of a quick temporary little thing. And there's times when you're burnt out, but it's a much longer term thing because you've got so much going on.
Yeah.
That you just can't get rid of it that quick.
Yeah. I absolutely 100% agree with you. I do feel like that list is absolutely out of order. I think if you were going to deal with it, like you said, there's short-term burnout, like what you and I experienced last week with the podcast. That was short-term. We were both back to normal the next day, able to do our thing. But it was like at the time that we were supposed to record, both of us were just mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted. And you can't think, much less be creative. And that's short term. And long term burnout isn't something that you can, you know what? Let me go to bed early tonight. I'll be rejuvenated tomorrow. That's not that long term burnout. And that's definitely the burnout that if burnout is actually interfering with your work, so specifically for this podcast, if it's interfering with your writing, that's when you sit back and go, okay, what's causing this? Figuring out what the root cause is, then going to that list that you gave and say to yourself, is this something that I can talk to my BFF or my writing buddies or my parent group or Someone more professional on some level, like a life coach, might be able to handle it. A certified therapist, not a psychiatrist, a certified therapist that you could just unload your issues to and they can give you tools. Or is it something deeper like a depression? Do you need to seek other help? I think there's, like you said, there's a little bit different priority list.
Yep.
For
It's
sure.
like layers, different layers.
Yeah.
Of it, right.
Yeah.
The deeper you go, the longer the list gets and the more important it is to put certain things at the top. Yeah. I think, again, we go back to the example of somebody who's just been trying to write that novel too hard for too long. Like they've literally maybe taken a hiatus from work and they're just focused on writing and they're forcing themselves to sit at the table and just write for days on end.
Yeah.
Right. That may be a more short-term piece where you can say, look, let me just go for a jog.
Yeah.
And let me do some yoga and do some meditation and let me get my head out of this and then come back to it.
Yeah. And I also think always when I have someone that I'm speaking to that's a writer and they tell me that they write 7 days a week, I have to find out a little bit more, because if you are writing 7 days a week, are you only writing for a few hours a day? That's one thing. That's not going to put you in any sort of burnout just by doing it a couple of hours every single day. Maybe that's how you stay on track. That's great. That's fine. But those people that tell me that they write for 6, 8, 10 hours a day, every day, no, you can't sustain that. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. That's going to get your work-life balance way out of whack. And you're going to end up on the other end of that burnout, having to stop and refocus and refigure and get yourself out of it. You're going to have to dig yourself out of it. Again, I'm not talking about the people that are writing 2-4 hours a day, maybe even that 6, because we're talking about when you're writing, it's deep concentration. You are in it. You are so focused on something. You are using that brain power that you have to eventually rest and rejuvenate. That can lead you into things that we've talked about on this podcast before. Writer's block. Writer's block isn't, oh, I can't figure this out. Writer's block is, I have burnout and I can't think. I can't come up with those creative solutions. Or you're trying too hard and you're squeezing the life out of any solutions. That's not going to happen. That's why when you're in the shower, on a drive, on a walk, all of a sudden those ideas start popping up, is because you've let everything go. So that's a little bit different. But one of my favorite things to do when I'm burned out, I have a dog. He is just the light of my life, makes me laugh. I sent a picture to Matt earlier today because I got up out of my chair and I came back, and I swear I was only gone for 2 minutes. And the dog is in my chair with the iPad in between his paws. I don't know actually how it got there. It must have fallen on him when he jumped into but it looked like he was, he stole it. And it looked like he was using it. So those little moments rejuvenate me. So when I'm really feeling burnout, I like to go outside. I like to go outside with the dog. I take him for a walk. I do stuff around the yard, feed the birds, but he's out there with me. Just something that allows me to let go of everything. We didn't get into a lot of the work-life balance issues, but when you're out in nature, neither one of those things matter. It's the one place that you can go that you literally don't have to think. You can just be. And sometimes that's the quickest way out, especially out of short-term burnout. What are some other things that they suggested on that list of things to do that stood out to you?
Things like we talked about, taking breaks, right? Setting boundaries. So your boundaries might be something like, hey, I'm only going to allow myself to do writing for 2 to 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we haven't really talked about a whole lot of this in this, series is creativity loves constraints. So sometimes if you do put that boundary on yourself that I can only write for 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's it. No more each day. And in that time, once that time, you set yourself a timer And once that time is up, you're done for the day. Right. And then you start to figure out, okay, how can I make this come to life for me? How can I make this get the most out of these 2 hours that I have? Right. So that is something that you could do as a boundary for yourself. There's other boundaries too. Like there may be boundaries you have to set at work that allow you to come home and be creative and do some of those fun things. There might be, maybe family puts a lot on you, and there are certain boundaries you have to set with family that like, look, this is my time. From this time to this time, this is my time. Every other time, good. I'll help you. I'll do whatever you need. But these 2 hours, my time,
there was an author once who said that she hangs a sign on her door that says, and I'm totally paraphrasing. I know there were more things than this, but like, unless you are, I don't even know what else it said. Like, but it was like, or at death's door, do not knock. It was all kind of tongue in cheek, but seriously, if this isn't something that you have to deal with during that time, hopefully you have a partner in life that maybe can take care of the kids for that. Again, set aside time of 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is that you can afford to do. But yeah, setting home boundaries, I think, is the hardest thing to do. And it is important to close that door, because if you leave the door open, as I have discovered, they think you're not working.
Yep.
They think you're not working. So it's like, oh, but your door was open. Well, that's because I wanted the door open. But yeah, boundaries are really difficult to do. So it's going to have to be a step-by-step sort of thing, testing different ways of doing it. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, there was an interesting study too. I was just trying to pull it up. So there was a study out of King's College in London about the effects on everyday encounters with birdsong, and how birdsong actually elevates your mental well-being, your mental health, that elevates your mood. Yep. That it was found to actually help people, even with depression, to again kind of elevate their mood. Not necessarily fix it. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a solve, but it really helped elevate that sense of well-being.
Yeah.
And then there was just something to that. So they had different groups, kind of those that had the same, like maybe it was medication, and this group had birdsong, this group did not, whatever it was, but they found that there was an absolute impact from that.
Yeah. And see, that totally makes sense to me too, because again, nature is my one place that I can find peace. And that's why I was like, really? Because when I'm out in nature, I don't live in what's considered a town. I'm in a little tiny community that's unincorporated, about 20 minutes outside of the biggest town. So when I go out, I absolutely hear the birds. And in fact, I wouldn't call myself a birdie person, but I can tell the different birds. I can tell what a blue jay sounds like versus a woodpecker. And I'm not talking about their pecking wood, but their actual bird song, as you say.
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, I'm reminded that it's the one place that you don't really have to think. Because if I don't know what the bird is, I'll be like, wonder what that bird is. I'm still not really using my brain at a capacity when I'm out in nature that I'm able to rejuvenate.
I think it is a little bit of a form of mindfulness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're focusing on happening now, right? You're focusing on what's happening now, what I can hear in this moment, and maybe what I can see as I look around looking for the birds, right? That also helps with that. I mean, their song, depending on the bird, their song is really pretty. There are some birds that do not have pretty songs, but in general,
well, what ones would those be?
The sandhill crane. If you haven't heard its call, it sounds like a flippin' pterodactyl. So, or what I imagine a pterodactyl would sound like.
Yeah.
Not exactly calming. It's a little bit panic inducing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, all of these things, I think, is to say, find things that work for you that help take you out of that moment, to help kind of center yourself. And again, just let stuff go.
Yeah.
And you'll find that you'll see a lot more benefit than that.
Yeah. I think actually the most important thing that you can do is figure out whether it is the short term burnout. Is this easily fixable? Or is this long-term burnout? Do I need to seek someone out? Do I need to do something further than just in the moment? Because I think once you do that, a little bit more of a direction and ease. And can I just go outside for 15 minutes, or do I need to go outside for 15 minutes every single day, 2-3 times a day, just to deal with whatever it is you're dealing with?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think there's something for everybody in this one, because again, we've all experienced it. We all kind of know what helps us disconnect and find maybe our flow again, as it were, and try to get away from that, which is keeping us from being as creative as we could possibly
be. Yeah. I think that's the takeaway for me for this episode, is realizing that it's okay to recognize your burnout, because that means you understand why you couldn't come up with those creative solutions, why you weren't able to focus. Because once you figure out what's going on, you can figure out how to solve it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the quote? A problem well defined is a problem half solved. Mm-hmm,
yes. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't solve it.
Exactly.
So
there we have it. Burnout, again, it's a real thing. We all know that we've dealt with it at some point or another, just like imposter syndrome.
Yes.
But it is something that can be easily solved if you take the time to analyze it, think about it, and then create a plan, right? We make it seem so simple.
Well, again, I think the biggest battle is to actually recognize that you're feeling burned out. Mm-hmm. Because I think people just tend to push through. Like, oh, I just need to get through this. Mm-hmm. But I think with burnout, recognizing that you have it and taking a moment to pause really isn't something that we've been taught to do.
Yeah. I agree. Well, very good. Well, burnout. We are burnt out on burnout.
Yes.
And
we have decided this topic.
That we are going to plant a flag, that we know how we're going to deal with this. And that for me is to grab some whiskey. I don't know how you, but a nice little drink and unwind.
Give me a piece of dark chocolate. That's my whiskey.
There you go. All right, my dear. Well, thank you. And thank you very much for listening. I hope that we will see you again next week. Until then, bye. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.